My first job was making burgers at KFC in Southeast London. I got that when I was 16. Today, I want to share a little bit of a different video with you. This is based on an article that our newest and youngest member of staff, Amy, wrote at the age of 16 about how she got her first job using 5 steps, and to walk you through the process, because I understand that actually getting a job for a lot of people is hard and there's really not a lot of helpful information out there which isn't full of hacks and gimmicks or tips from the US or other countries that really don't apply to people here in the UK. So here goes. When Amy first started looking for a job, she had absolutely no idea what she was doing. Her mum basically said to her during the summer holidays after her GCSEs that she needed to get a job and get out of the house. So she looked on TikTok, she looked on Google, she went through CV templates and Reddit articles and posts and so on and so forth. And actually what ended up happening is she just felt really angry and confused because there was nothing that was really telling her what she should do, or there were just lots of articles which were pitched at graduates or professionals that weren't really that helpful for her. When I think back all the way back to when I first started looking for a job, I had no idea what I was doing. No one had taught me anything at school. In fact, I never got taught how to find a job. I spoke to my mum, but she wasn't actually working, so that wasn't that helpful. And I lived quite a long way away from school. So I couldn't really talk to anybody in my local area, like speaking to your mates, asking them where they're working and what they're doing, because that wasn't something that was going to be applicable for me. So I kind of just had to make it up as I was going along. Amy starts off her story by talking about what was the thing that motivated her. Now for her, it's clothes. She likes particular types of clothes and she felt that they were quite expensive, for example, True Religion jeans. And this wasn't something that she was going to be getting from her parents. Now, not because they don't love her or they don't get her new clothes, but she wanted to buy things and have the freedom to buy them when she wanted to and have the choice to do the things that she wanted to do. And when I think back to it, I also felt the same. And this is step 1, which is what is your motivation? Having a motivation or something to aim for is really important, because finding a job is going to be difficult and there are going to be times you just think, what's the point? I can't go on, I'm just going to go home. This is stupid, I don't want to do it anymore. This is probably the first time when you're going to encounter something that is really difficult and also completely outside of your control, apart from exams and personal life experience. For me, the big motivation was getting a new mobile phone. Now at the time, I didn't have a mobile phone. Mobile phones are pretty new. This gives you an inclination of how long ago this was. And I wanted to get a Nokia 3410 and it cost £120. And I think at the time, my mum was giving me like £5 a week pocket money. So in my mind, I thought, well, I can either save all my pocket money for 24 weeks, which I've never done, or I can go and get a job and maybe have enough to buy the phone in a couple of weeks. So that became my motivation for getting a job, which was really important when I was going out there and doing the things which we're going to go through in the preceding steps. Amy broke this down into 4 different ideas, which was number 1, accepting that finding a job is going to be a long and difficult process. Definitely when I speak to people, they seem to get disheartened very easily. And we're talking about graduates and professionals. When I ask them, how many jobs have you applied for? They'll be like 5 or 12. That's not a real number. Come on. I mean, you could do that in a day. This might be a process that means you have to ask dozens of people. The second thing to think about is just trying to visualize what is it the thing that you want. Now, I can remember really specifically when I was 16 that I desperately wanted this phone. It was the most important thing in my life because all my friends had mobile phones. They were texting each other, phoning each other. I wasn't cool because I didn't have a mobile phone and I couldn't afford to get one. And if I didn't have a mobile phone, then I'd be left out of all the cool stuff that we would be doing as teenagers, i.e., going out and doing things that probably we shouldn't have been doing. So this created a really strong image in my mind to drive me to the place that I wanted to go. The third thing that she talks about is just talking to your friends. So I think one of my friends was delivering No, he couldn't have been. So one of my friends was working in Robert Dias, somebody else was working in fast food. You know, people doing different jobs, people who were maybe a bit more well off, maybe they were working for their parents' companies, you know, that sort of thing. But they were doing pretty, I would say, not so great jobs, but they had money, right? So the big thing for them was that they were working a Saturday job and they had enough money. So come the weekend, they could go out and maybe have a nice time on a Saturday night or buy themselves a new bit of, you know, kit or some new clothes, something like that. But they had a lot of weird and wonderful jobs. But you'll kind of get the lay of the land if you ask people what they're doing, which means you're going to have to put yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit, but not just your friends. Just asking people like, what are you doing for work these days? Are you working, or, you know, what's the crack? Because there is so much to be leveraged from just opening your mouth and asking people questions. And the fourth thing that Amy talked about, and it was exactly the same for me, it was just about independence. It was about freedom. It was about the ability to go out and do the things that I wanted to do without having to ask my mum, thousandth time, please could I have some money? So the second step you've got to go through, if you haven't already done it, is doing your CV. Now, if you check the link down in the description below, there is a free pack of downloads that you can get, which includes a CV template. The CVs are boring and time consuming. Most people, you know, don't like writing, if I'm honest with you, and probably never done a CV before. But this is a really good place to start because it just gives you something that you can present to somebody else so that they remember you. Also, it's something that you could send as a file through WhatsApp, you could send it as a PDF through email, but having a template to start with is a good thing. Now, you'll notice when you look at the template that it's not particularly flashy. Don't worry about flash designs. Also, don't worry about BS paragraphs. So saying, oh, I've done this and I'm really highly motivated and da-da-da-da-da. I think the most important thing when you're getting your first job is basically, where do you live? Can you drive? When are you available? And when can you start? And what are the basic skills that you have? So for example, if you're applying like I was in KFC, then you say, look, I live in the local area. No, I don't drive, but I can get a bus and be there in like 15 minutes. I'm available at these times. I'm ready to start. I can cook. I can be hygienic. I can speak good English. Yeah, let's go. You know, and I'm willing to learn. And these are the things that were really important. No one really believes like BS sentences and paragraphs on a CV. Like, I'm really highly motivated and I'm a top student. No one cares. My grades have no material relevance to me making a chicken fillet burger at KFC. Nobody cared. They're just like, can you be on time? Can you be flexible? Can you work? Can you be tall? And can you just do the job that we ask you to do, right? So once you download the CV template, write it out, and then you can get your friends or your family to check it. You can use ChatGPT, there's nothing wrong with that, or Gemini, or whatever sort of stuff that you're using. But I do recommend that you keep it short, particularly if you've got no experience. Don't feel like you have to fill the page. Just keep it to the bare bones, to the bare minimum. If you play sport or have any extracurricular activity, I've always think this is quite good from an employer's point of view because it demonstrates that you're doing more than you have to and you're being a little bit more engaged in life. Particularly, I have to say that I sort of find it quite appealing when someone's part of a sports club or has done martial arts or been engaged in some sort of volunteering, because it just demonstrates they're a bit of a go-getter and they're trying to do something with their time besides just studying. Another thing that you want to kind of remember when you're using AI and stuff like that is just keep the language and the wording simple. Something I highly recommend is an app called Hemingway, which you can use to find out the reading age. And you're really aiming for a reading grade, which is from the US, of between 4 and 6, which is basically pitched at a 10 to 12-year-old. The more complicated your language, the more difficult it's going to be to understand you, and the more likely it is that whoever's reading that is going to say no. Step number 3 is going out and handing your CV. So getting printed copies of your CV. Personally, I think there's a lot of room to go out and to meet people. Yeah, of course, you can submit your CV through Indeed, you could put yourself on LinkedIn, but you're competing with millions of people. And just remember, if it's easy for you, it's easy for everyone else. And if it's easy for everyone else, it's hard for you. Put a little bit of heart, a bit of thought, a bit of feeling into it. And I don't think that you can compete and be discernibly different if you've got no career capital by sitting there at home and sending out jobs through LinkedIn and Indeed. Now, going to hand out your CV is no doubt very scary. I was terrified. I was not a particularly extroverted teenager. I didn't have the gift of the gab or be able to go out and speak to people. I was all right with my friends, but at that time, about 16 years old, I was quite into myself, if that makes sense. So it meant that I had a lot of fear going out and speaking to people, but really it was pretty simple. I went into Eltham, I just walked up one side of the high street and down the other side. I went into every single store. I went, I think, on a weekday kind of afternoon. That was a good time to do it because it wasn't too busy. If you're going into stores at the weekend, they're probably going to be really packed, and that's not a good time to try and catch people when they're busy because they're like, look, I haven't got time for this. I've got customers that I need to serve. So I would walk into the store and just say, hi, my name's Mike. I'm looking for a job. I'm available to work for part-time. I just wondered, have you got anything available? They'd say yes, they'd say no, they'd take my CV, they wouldn't take my CV. Just so happened, KFC was probably the 20th or 30th place that I walked into in Eltham. The guy just kind of looked at me, it was quiet, and he just said, well, you know, can you get here? Where do you live? And I said, oh, I live in Lewisham. So he said, oh, so it's about 15 minutes. I said, yes. He said, look, can you get here every Saturday? I said, yes. He said, look, are you happy to, at the time, they wanted me to serve on as a cashier. And I was like, look, I don't really feel confident, but I'm happy to cook. He was quite surprised because normally it was like guys whose English wasn't great were getting to, you know, cook the food. He was like, yeah, that's fine if you wanted to cook the food. He said, look, you know, leave your CV, I'll check with my manager, but do you think you could come in this Saturday for a trial? And I was like, absolutely. And I think there are a couple of important points that I want to make here that might not be, you know, kind of really obvious to you if you're just trying to find your first job. Number one, look keen, look motivated, look happy. If you come in looking depressed and bored, I'm not going to want to give you a job, right? Just say, hi, my name's Mike, I'm looking for a job, you know, I'm keen, I'm happy to do anything. I could be here 3 evenings a week or whenever you needed me at the weekend. I'm happy to start as soon as possible. Somebody who's a bit more like, hey, rather than someone who's a bit more like, oh, and wants to jump off a bridge, right? So the more motivated you are, the better that you're going to come across. Now, bear in mind, that's easy for me to say when you haven't done that about 30 times during the day. Now, some shops will have advertisements that are in the window. A lot of shops won't advertise, but say you went in there and that person's kind of not sure and say like, hey, I could come and do a couple of hours for you for free just to show you what I'm made of. The biggest reservation, and I have this with a lot of my friends who have businesses or who are highly skilled tradesmen or have their own stores, is that they'll just say people are an enormous waste of time. So what you have to think about from your audience's perspective, who is a business owner, is how can I de-risk this situation? How can I make it as easy as possible for you to give me a job? You know, you could just say to them like, hey, do you need help on a Saturday morning setting up? So you went into newsagents and the guy would be like, well, yeah, that would be cool. And then you turn around to him and say, well, look, I will be here at 7 a.m. You don't have to pay me, and I will come in and help you out for free for an hour, just as a trial. The chances are pretty good. If you say that to enough people, someone's going to say yes. Number one, because people don't do that. And number two, because we love free help as business owners. And obviously, you don't want somebody who's going to take advantage of you. And the same goes for if you're messaging people just saying, look, I could come down and help you out, and being specific about what you can do. Something that's actually not that helpful is someone saying, I could just work for you for free. Because then you're like, doing what? I mean, then I have to think about what you have to do. Yeah, and the same goes for, you could go on a construction site and say, you know, hi, my name's Steve. I'm looking to, you know, work during the weekend. Is there anything difficult that you could use help with? And they'll probably say, well, carrying stuff. You go, okay, cool. Well, why don't I come down tomorrow afternoon and I'll carry around some stuff for you for free for an hour. Now, if you did that, again, the chances are pretty good they're going to be like, who is this kid? Like, he just turned up and he's just been here for an hour. Let's give him a job. So you're trying to create your own opportunities. The opportunities aren't just going to come to you, and that's the same thing with Indeed and also with LinkedIn. Just try and think about creating those opportunities. And finally, you've just got to think about volume and being tactical and strategic. So the chances are, if you're watching this, that you don't drive. So if you don't drive, you need to think, well, what's in my local area? If you live in the city, this is easy. Amy, for example, lived in a rural area and there really was nothing there. There was like 3 pubs and a newsagent. So she then had to start to kind of branch out a little bit. So think, well, where could I get to by bus in 15 minutes? So then she had 2 local towns which are near to her. She basically went to the town and walked up and down. Now, the important thing is, I would say, if you're doing this, this is a great thing to do. Also, if you're doing this, go back in a week and just ask them again. Right? Say, oh, hey, I was here a week ago. Did anybody manage to have a look at my CV? Yes, I know that someone's going to be sitting there going, oh, it's so cringeworthy and I'm so scary. But you want to follow up. You want to find out what's happened. A lot of times people just forget. I have to admit, I forget stuff all the time. Right? So when somebody follows up with me, I'm like, oh yeah, that's that thing. I said that I'd get back to you. I'm really sorry. And then we can take it from there. The other thing that you can also do of handing out your CV is speaking to your family, speaking to your family friends, speaking to your friends, speaking to your friends' parents, speaking to anybody who will talk to say, hey, I'm looking for a Saturday job. Do you know if anything's going? Looking at local Facebook groups, looking at local community groups, looking at anywhere where people are coming together and just putting yourself out there and go, hi, my name's Steve, I'm 16, I can work every Saturday, I'm happy to do anything, I can travel in this local area, here's my number, here's my CV, give me a call. So putting yourself out there. Having been a member of a couple of community groups, I can genuinely say I've seen parents looking around, but I very rarely see young people using Facebook, using community sites to just put themselves out there. Because if no one knows, no one's going to approach you with an opportunity. The more volume that you have, the more you put yourself out there, the more likely it is that somebody's going to go, yeah, actually, I could really do with some help on a Saturday. Can you be here at 8 o'clock? Because you have to be there at the right time to be able to leverage that opportunity. Step number 4 that Amy talked about was accepting rejection. Now, I understand, particularly if you're a young person and you're watching this, rejection can seem pretty crushing. What can seem worse is that when you go out and put in all the hard work, and then nobody gets back to you and you've just been ghosted. So say you went out and you spoke to 20 people. Now, a good trick that a mentor of mine taught me was what was called knowing your numbers or knowing your ratios. Now, this is a good way of looking at it. So he used to do cold calling when he first joined a management consulting firm, and they were selling team training services. Now, these were quite expensive services at the time, and we're talking about the 1980s. This costs like $5,000, which is a lot of money now, right? So what he would do is that he would cold call people, and he knew that people were going to say no. But what he started to realize was that every 15 people he called, he actually managed to keep somebody on the phone for longer than 30 seconds. And then of those 1 in 15 people, every 4 would say, yeah, actually, why don't you come down to my office and I'd love to know more about it. And then one of those 3 people would turn around and would buy his services. So when he did the maths, he was like, well, 1 in 15 people will say yes. Then I just need to get 4 to book an appointment, so that's 60 people. And I just need to get another, then of 1 of 3 appointments. So basically 1 in 180 people would buy something from him. Now this seems like a lot of people, but it made it much more manageable for him, because all he just thought was every time someone said no, he was like, number 72, you're not the one. Number 73, you're not the one. Number 74, oh, okay, cool. And then he knew his numbers, like he knew his metrics. So when you're speaking to people, just pay attention. Maybe every 10 people you speak to, someone says, oh, actually, yeah, I think I've got a friend who's looking for somebody, why don't I give you their number, right? So you think, okay, so if I speak to 10 people, one of them is going to have an opportunity for me. And this is about knowing your numbers. Rejection is just part of the process. The most important thing to internalize, and it's difficult at first, but you'll get used to it, is it's just not personal. So if somebody, asks me for a job, or goes to, one of our businesses and they ask for a job, it's not personal. We just don't need anybody, right? We already have a team of people, and all those people cost money, and business costs money, and all those sorts of things. But it's not us turning around to you and saying, oh my God, you're a horrible, disgusting human being. We would never give you a job. We absolutely hate your face. That's not what we're saying at all. We're just like, look, this is just not the right opportunity for us right now. Bearing in mind that could change within a week's time or a month's time, which is why it's important to sort of keep track of the people and the things that you're doing, because you might go back to them in a week or a month and say, hey, just wanted to reach out to you again and just see if you've got any jobs available. So knowing your numbers and accepting rejection is an important part of the process, not to get discouraged. The thing that I always liked, particularly when I've done sales jobs in the past, which was every no is a step closer to a yes. And every time someone said no, I was just like, it's not the right person for me. That's not the right opportunity for me. Step number 5 is doing an interview. So most of the time, if you're getting your first job or you're getting a service job, right? So whether you're working in a supermarket or delivering pizza, working in fast food or working in a restaurant, the chances are that this is like the final stage. So what should you do when you're preparing for an interview? Know a little bit about the business, know a bit about the job and what you're going to be doing and what's expected of you, and be prepared to answer questions which relate to the job and the job description. So as soon as you get the chance to have an interview, please make sure you turn up looking smart, if possible in business dress. Now you might be going, well, it's not cool, I don't like it, or bearing in mind, it doesn't matter. If you want a job, then you have to jump through the hoops, and first impressions are always lasting. If somebody turns up in a suit and a tie or dressed smart, it has a big first impression, because it basically says that you're taking this seriously, you're respectful of your audience, and you're willing to learn and willing to be taught. Whenever people turn up and they're very much like, well, this is all about me and this is what I like, all I hear is, you're not teachable, I can't manage you, you're going to be difficult, I'm just not interested. Because nobody wants to hire somebody who's going to constantly be, in friction with. It's just not something that's interesting. They'll just wait and look for somebody else. So you know a little bit about the job, you know a little bit about what you're going to do, and just really talking about what motivates you. So why is it that you want to do the job? You want a little bit of freedom. These are the things that you've enjoyed at school or at university. Trying to pick out 2 or 3 stories that you feel puts you in the best light is a good way to prepare for competency questions. If you can, try and practice with your parents, your siblings, your friends, just being asked some random questions. The best way to prepare for an interview is just to do a couple of mocks, just to get used to it. The reason why most people fail when it's their first interview is they've just had no practice. They're learning that skill, but they're learning that skill under fire and under pressure. Just relax, just be yourself. The more prepared you are, the easier that you're going to find it. And remember, that person wants to give you a job. If they're advertising for a role, if you've come along at the right time, they're desperate to find somebody who could just do that job, because the business is probably losing money or losing out on orders or customers, and they really want you to be that person to help them. And once you have the job, just be consistent, be on time, do your work, don't be distracted, and you'll be surprised how simple things like that will really make a difference when it comes to your employer. Guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. It was something a little bit different. Check out the link in the description below for Amy's article, and I will see you next time. Bye.